Okay, so let's talk about AI governance. It's really important because as AI grows, we need to make sure it's being developed and used in a way that's trustworthy. Think of governance frameworks like a blueprint. They provide us with a solid foundation. They're built around some core principles, like fairness and transparency, and then they translate those into specific policies and procedures. It's not just one and done, it's about continually adapting to keep things safe and effective. Okay, so by 2025, AI is going to be asterisk everywhere asterisk. Think about how we use AI today. It's already influencing what we buy, where we go, even who gets a job. But this massive growth also means serious risks. We're talking about the potential for huge data breaches, systems making unfair decisions because they've been trained on biased information, and unfortunately, the possibility of AI being used in ways that could be incredibly harmful. It's not just about avoiding penalties, it's about building trust and making sure we're using this powerful technology responsibly. Let's talk about building AI systems that are actually responsible. It's not just about making them work, it's about ensuring they do good and don't cause harm. We need to focus on 3 key areas: ethics, meaning fairness and avoiding bias; transparency, understanding how these decisions are made; and accountability, knowing who is responsible when things go wrong. To get practical, we can start with data auditing, looking for hidden biases in the information used to train our AI, and continuously monitoring those algorithms to make sure they're behaving as expected. Okay, let's talk about managing risk when you're working with AI models. It's super important to think about these things asterisk before asterisk and asterisk after asterisk you deploy a model. First, make sure your data is high quality and free from bias, because biased data leads to biased results. Then, continuously monitor your model's performance after it goes live. If it starts making mistakes, you need to know. We also want to understand how our models are asterisk making asterisk decisions, not just what they're saying, using things like explainable AI techniques. A secure development lifecycle is crucial. Security needs to be built in from the start. Finally, don't forget rigorous testing and validation to catch any potential weaknesses before they cause problems. Let's talk about how privacy fits into artificial intelligence. AI systems need a lot of data to learn, and that data often contains personal information. Because of this, we have several important regulations to consider. The most well-known is GDPR, which comes from the European Union and sets strict rules for handling EU citizens' data, including things like getting their consent before collecting it and giving them the right to delete their information if they want. Then there's the CCPA, which applies in California and gives consumers similar rights over their personal data. But it's not just these two, there are other state laws popping up all the time, so keeping up with the latest regulations is a real priority for anyone building or using AI. Let's talk about securing those AI API. They're becoming super important, but they also create some real risks. Think of them as gateways to your AI models, and just like any gateway, we need strong defenses. We've got a few common threats to watch out for: injection attacks, where someone tries to sneak in malicious code; credential stuffing, if attackers keep trying different logins; denial of service attacks that overload the system; API key theft, which is a big one; and even subtle side channel attacks. But don't worry, there are ways to protect yourself. Strong authentication, really double-checking everything coming into your API, limiting how many requests people can make, rotating those API keys like they are hot potatoes, and constantly monitoring for anything unusual will go a long way in keeping your AI API safe. Okay, let's talk about building AI responsibly. We're looking at 5 key pillars: fairness, making sure AI doesn't unfairly disadvantage certain groups; transparency, understanding asterisk why asterisk an AI makes a decision, which is really important for trust; accountability, knowing who to hold responsible when things go wrong; privacy and data security, protecting personal information; and finally, keeping humans in the loop with human oversight and control. These aren't just nice to haves, they're fundamental to building AI that serves us all well. Let's talk about how AI needs to be handled in sectors like finance and healthcare. These industries have really specific rules they need to follow. In finance, things like GDPR and CCPA are super important for protecting customer data, and we need to make sure our algorithms aren't unfairly discriminating when it comes to lending or fraud detection. Healthcare has its own set of challenges, with HIPAA making sure patient privacy is protected when AI helps diagnose illnesses or suggest treatments. And the FDA has strict regulations around new AI-powered medical devices focusing on safety and effectiveness. It's really about being proactive and building a solid compliance strategy to avoid problems down the road. Okay, let's talk about keeping our AI models fair. It's really important to actively monitor them, not just when they are first built, because sometimes these models inherit biases from the data we feed them. This slide outlines a few key steps. We need to regularly audit our training data, looking for imbalances or unfair representations within it. Then, we can track how well the model performs across different groups of people and see if there's any disparity in accuracy. Techniques like SHAP values can help us understand why the model is making certain decisions, which could reveal biased relationships between features. Finally, setting up feedback loops allows users to report potential issues after deployment. It's a continuous process to ensure our AI is equitable. Okay, let's talk about securing AI with a really important concept called zero trust. Traditionally, we've built security around the idea that if you're inside our network, you're trustworthy. But AI systems are different. They often rely on lots of external connections and data, essentially creating a much bigger target. Zero trust flips this thinking completely. It basically says never trust, always verify. Every single user, device, or application trying to access anything needs to be checked and approved constantly. It's about assuming that a breach is already happening and building your security around that reality, focusing on strong monitoring and detection. And finally, we apply the principle of least privilege, giving people only what they absolutely need to do their job. Okay, let's talk about how to handle problems with your AI systems. We call this incident response planning. It's super important because if something goes wrong, you need a plan in place to react quickly and effectively. First, you'll want to figure out what your most critical AI systems are and what the potential downsides could be, like bias or privacy issues. Next, define exactly who's responsible for different parts of the process: investigation, fixing things, communicating with others, and making sure everything is legal. Then, you'll need a way to categorize incidents based on how serious they are: low, medium, high. And finally, build detailed step-by-step playbooks for each category, including example scenarios and how to address them. Don't forget to test these plans regularly through simulations. It will ensure your team is ready when the time comes. Okay, let's talk about how to tackle AI compliance in the EU and the US. They are actually quite different. The European Union is taking a very proactive stance with its AI Act. It's all based on risk levels. High-risk AI systems face stricter rules around things like data quality, bias detection, and most importantly, keeping humans firmly in control of decisions. Then you have the US, which hasn't yet passed comprehensive federal legislation but is using a patchwork of regulations and guidance from bodies like NIST and the FTC. NIST offers a helpful framework to manage AI risks, while the FTC is actively looking out for unfair or deceptive practices related to algorithms. Basically, a solid strategy needs to account for both approaches. It's not an either/or situation. Okay, let's talk about making AI models understandable. Transparency is a huge deal when it comes to AI governance. One really important step we can take is implementing explainability techniques. Basically, these methods help us figure out why an AI made the decision it did. There are a few popular ones: SHAP, LIME, and counterfactual explanations. SHAP uses game theory to show which features were most influential. LIME creates a simplified version of the model for local explanations, and counterfactuals tell us what small changes would have led to a different outcome. All this is crucial for ensuring fairness, spotting bias, and being able to justify AI decisions, things that are increasingly important as we deal with regulations like GDPR and other frameworks focused on algorithmic accountability. Okay, let's talk about AI model audit trails. Think of them as a detailed logbook for your AI systems, tracking everything from where the data came from to how the model made its decisions. Why are they so important? Well, regulations like GDPR and CCPA are getting stricter, so it's becoming essential to show you're handling data responsibly. But it goes beyond just compliance. Audit trails also help us spot potential risks, biases in the model, or vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Plus, by understanding why a model made a particular prediction, we can actually improve its performance and make it more accurate. Okay, let's talk about data sovereignty. As AI gets bigger and more complex, it needs huge amounts of data, often from all over the world. But countries have different rules about that data can be stored and used. It's like a global puzzle. We need to figure out where our data is coming from, what regulations apply in each location, and how we can comply with them. That might mean storing everything locally, using techniques like masking to protect sensitive information, and always getting clear consent from people whose data we're using. Okay, let's talk about the tools shaping how we approach AI governance in 2025. A huge driver is regulations like the EU AI Act. It's pushing companies to really think about risk and responsibility. We're seeing a big demand for tools that help us understand why an AI model makes its decisions, tackling bias, and tracking where data comes from. And, of course, continuously monitoring models for performance is crucial. I wanted to give you a quick look at some leading platforms. Weights and Biases offers robust MLOps capabilities. Lucid Insights is focused specifically on governance workflows. Ours AI specializes in model monitoring and bias detection, and Scale AI provides the data needed to train these systems effectively. Pricing varies quite a bit depending on your needs. Okay, let's talk about building a strong foundation for ethical AI within your organization. The first step is really about getting everyone at the table: legal teams, security experts, data scientists, most importantly, people who will be affected by your AI systems. It's key to understand what values are important and where potential risks might lie. Then, we need to define some core principles that will guide all of our work. Things like fairness, making sure algorithms aren't biased; transparency, being able to explain how an AI makes decisions; accountability, so we know who is responsible if something goes wrong; and protecting people's privacy. Finally, it's vital to put these principles into concrete policies that everyone can follow and understand. Okay, let's talk about keeping track of those awesome AI models you're building, specifically how to do it in a way that's compliant with regulations. A model registry is your central hub for all things model, but it needs more than just storage. You need to know where the data came from, how it was created, and who has access. Think of it like documenting every step of the process. It's also important to capture key details about each model version's performance, even potential biases. Finally, make sure you have clear policies in place for how these models are used, monitored, and eventually retired. And don't forget regulations like GDPR or CCPA. Ensure your registry practices align with those standards. Okay, let's talk about securing the foundation of your AI models, the training data pipelines. These are essentially the pathways that feed information into your algorithms. It's absolutely vital to ensure these paths are safe and reliable. We need to check where our data is coming from, making sure it's legitimate. Then we have to carefully control who can access these pipelines, limiting privileges only to those who absolutely need them. Encryption is a must. Protect the data both when it's moving and when it's stored. And finally, constant monitoring and audits are key. We want to spot anything unusual quickly and keep track of everything that happens. Okay, so let's get practical. Building an AI compliance dashboard is all about bringing your data together into one easy-to-understand place. First, you'll need to pull information from a bunch of different sources, things like where your models are running, how they're trained, and even what users are doing with them. Then we want to focus on the right metrics. Are there any privacy issues popping up? Is your AI showing bias? How is it actually performing? Visualizations, charts, and graphs really help you spot trends. And crucially, don't forget alerts. If a metric crosses a certain line, say a bias score goes too high, you want to be notified immediately. Finally, think about who will be using the dashboard. Different people need different levels of access and clear explanations so everyone can understand what's going on. Let's talk about how we can actively check for unfairness in AI. It's really important that the data used to train these models doesn't reflect existing biases, because if it does, the model will likely repeat those biases. We have a few techniques we can use. First, carefully looking at our training data itself and making sure it represents everyone fairly. Then, there are fairness metrics, like disparate impact, that help us measure how biased an AI system is for different groups. We can also try adversarial debiasing, which involves training a separate model to identify protected characteristics, and counterfactual analysis, essentially asking what-if questions to see how changes in the input affect outcomes. Bias detection isn't a one-time thing, it needs constant monitoring and re-evaluation. Okay, let's talk about holding AI accountable. It's not enough for an AI to simply do something. We need to understand why it did it and how we can fix problems if they arise. This means pushing for more transparent AI systems that actually explain their reasoning. Think of it like a doctor explaining why they prescribed a particular medication, instead of just handing you the pill. We also need detailed logs of everything an AI system does so we can track decisions and investigate any issues. And crucially, there needs to be human oversight in place, with ways for people to challenge outcomes that seem unfair or problematic. Finally, let's not forget bias. AI systems are only as good as the data they're trained on, so constant monitoring is key. Okay, let's talk about protecting data when we're using it in AI projects. We need to balance the benefits of having data with the importance of people's privacy. There are two main approaches: anonymization and pseudonymization. Anonymization is like scrubbing all traces of someone. You can't even link it back to a specific person anymore. Pseudonymization, on the other hand, replaces identifying information with unique codes or identifiers. Think of it as giving everyone a secret nickname. While these codes could potentially be linked back to an individual under certain circumstances, like if we have additional data, they provide more flexibility for using the data in AI models. It's crucial that we handle those pseudonyms extremely carefully, with strong security measures and clear policies around how they're managed. Okay, let's talk about some specific security threats facing AI systems today. There are a few common vulnerabilities we need to be aware of: things like data poisoning, where bad information is slipped into the training process, and adversarial attacks, which are cleverly designed inputs that can fool an AI. We also have risks related to stealing the model itself through extraction methods, and vulnerabilities within the components used in our AI systems, often from third-party libraries. The good news is there's a lot we can do about it. Robust data checks and adversarial training can help us build more resilient models, while techniques like obfuscation make stealing the model harder. Finally, sticking to secure coding practices is essential for the entire system. Okay, let's talk about keeping our AI safe, specifically who gets to touch it. Managing access is absolutely critical. We need to think about roles, like data analyst, model trainer, or deployment engineer, and give each person exactly the permissions they need for their job. The principle of least privilege means no one gets more power than they require. And, critically, we should be keeping a close eye on everything with audits and monitoring to spot any unusual activity. It's about making sure our AI is used responsibly and ethically, and that's where strong access controls really pay off. Let's talk about AI surveillance. It's a really powerful technology with the potential to help us keep communities safe, but it also presents some serious ethical challenges. One of the biggest worries is bias. If the data used to train these systems reflects existing prejudices, the AI will likely perpetuate those biases too. We have to think about privacy, because constant monitoring can feel invasive and erode our fundamental rights. It's also important that we understand how these decisions are being made. When an error happens, it's hard to hold anyone accountable if the system is a black box. Finally, there's the potential for a chilling effect. People might be less likely to express themselves freely or participate in public life if they know they're constantly under observation. Addressing these issues requires careful planning and strong safeguards like independent audits and clear lines of responsibility. Okay, let's talk about IEC 23894. It's a really important standard for anyone working with artificial intelligence. Think of it as a blueprint for how organizations should manage their AI systems responsibly. This standard breaks down AI governance into 4 key areas: accountability, making sure someone is ultimately in charge and responsible; technical management, this covers everything from development to monitoring; data governance, handling your data ethically and accurately; and crucially, human oversight, keeping people involved in important decisions made by AI. This slide lays the groundwork. It's about understanding these fundamental pillars. Now we'll move on to implementing some concrete security controls to protect those systems. Okay, let's talk about how we protect AI from being tricked. We're facing a real challenge with something called adversarial attacks. Basically, someone can intentionally create tiny, almost invisible changes to data, like a slightly altered image, that cause an AI model to completely misclassify it. There are a few different techniques they use, like adding small amounts of noise or finding the most effective ways to mess with the input. To defend against this, we're using strategies like adversarial training, where we teach our models to recognize these tricks by exposing them to examples that have been deliberately manipulated. Defensive distillation and simple input transformations are also helpful tools in building more resilient AI systems. It's a constant arms race, though the attackers are always coming up with new ways to break through defenses, so ongoing research is absolutely essential. Okay, let's talk about making sure we understand how AI systems are working. That's transparency. It's all about shedding light on the decision-making processes behind those algorithms. We use things like explainable AI or XAI, which help us figure out why a model made a specific prediction. Think of it as giving the AI an interpreter. Model codes are also really important. They're basically standardized reports that tell you all about the model, what data was used to train it, what it's supposed to do, and even its limitations. And finally, keeping track of where your data comes from. That's provenance tracking is key. It's like building a detailed audit trail. Auditability goes hand in hand with transparency. It means having a clear system for reviewing models, checking for potential problems, and proving that everything is compliant with rules and regulations. Okay, let's talk about building a strong foundation for responsible AI, specifically establishing an AI ethics review committee. Think of this committee as your proactive conscience for any new AI project. They are there to identify potential risks before you even roll out the system. Their main job is to assess whether the AI could cause harm, spot bias in the data or algorithm, and make sure people understand how it works. A good committee will have a diverse group of experts: legal, technical, ethical, and even representatives from those who might be affected by the AI. And crucially, they need a clear process for reviewing projects, with defined timelines and decision-making guidelines. It's about building trust and ensuring your AI is aligned with our values. Okay, let's talk about securing those AI API. As AI is becoming more integrated into our systems, we need to make sure access is controlled properly. OAuth 2.0 is a clever system that allows apps to act on your behalf without needing your password. It's like giving someone a temporary key. Then, we use JWT, which are essentially digital passports, to verify who's making the request and what they should be allowed to do. Basically, OAuth handles the user login, and the JWT ensures that only authorized applications can access sensitive data or functionality. It offers great security, simplifies things for developers, and helps ensure everything scales well as your AI application grows. Okay, let's talk about building AI systems responsibly. We want to start with privacy by design, or PBD. Think of it as a core philosophy, not just an add-on. It means we need to bake privacy considerations right in from the very beginning. The key principles are being proactive rather than reactive, assuming data is sensitive unless proven otherwise, sticking to specific purposes for what we collect, and only gathering the minimal amount of data needed. A really important first step. Mapping out your data, knowing exactly where it comes from, how you're using it, and who's got access. This transparency is crucial. Okay, let's talk about how we can really protect the privacy of data used in AI models. We've seen that just removing names doesn't always cut it. The concept here is called differential privacy. It's like adding a little bit of controlled random noise to the information. It guarantees that if someone knows a specific individual's data was included, they can't really learn much more than they already would have without it. We use something called epsilon and delta to measure how much privacy we're giving up. The lower the epsilon value, the stronger the protection, but you might also see a small drop in accuracy. There are a few different techniques for applying this, like adding noise directly to calculations, and it's a really important area of research as AI becomes more prevalent. Let's talk about managing risk when using AI as a service. Think about it, you're handing over data and potentially even models to a third party. It's really important to start by figuring out what's critical, like which datasets are particularly sensitive or valuable. Then, dig into the vendor's security practices. Don't just trust their claims, look for certifications and understand how they protect your information. You also need to be crystal clear about who owns the data and how it's being used, ensuring you're compliant with regulations like GDPR or CCPA. Finally, make sure you have strong SLA in place covering things like uptime and support response times, and continuously monitor their performance. Let's talk about moving AI data across borders. It's a surprisingly complicated area. Different countries have wildly different rules about where your data can be stored and how it can be used. Some, like Brazil, require personal data to stay within their own country. Then you've got GDPR, which allows transfers under specific circumstances, but you need to make sure your contracts are current. And don't forget California's CCPA/CPRO adds another layer of complexity. A smart strategy is often to train and run AI models locally where the data originates, minimizing those cross-border flows. Finally, it's vital to map out exactly how your AI systems handle data, know where it's coming from, going to, and what's happening with it along the way. This helps you stay compliant as regulations shift. Okay, so we're now diving into where AI is having the biggest impact and where it needs the most careful consideration. We're looking at some really important industries like healthcare, finance, law enforcement, and even critical infrastructure. Think about how AI can help doctors spot diseases earlier or improve treatment plans in healthcare, or how it can detect fraud in banks. However, these powerful tools also come with significant responsibilities. We need to ensure that the data we're using is protected, that algorithms aren't unfairly biased against certain groups, and that there's always someone accountable for decisions made by AI. Each of these sectors has unique challenges, from protecting patient privacy in healthcare to preventing discriminatory lending practices in finance. Okay, so let's talk about making AI systems more understandable. It's really important because these powerful tools are being used in a lot of areas that affect our lives, from getting loans to medical care. The problem is a lot of AI models are like black boxes, and it's hard to figure out why they make the decisions they do. That can be concerning. We're looking at techniques like SHAP values, which tell us how important each piece of information was in making a prediction, or LIME, which looks at how the outcome changes if we tweak the input slightly. And then there are counterfactual explanations, basically what-if scenarios that can help people understand what they need to change to get a different result. It's about giving users enough insights so they trust the system and know it's making fair decisions. Let's talk about governance in multi-tenant clouds. Think of it like managing a large building where many different tenants share the same infrastructure. It's not just about having secure access to your space. You need to make sure that each tenant is completely isolated from others and following all the rules. That means strong data protection, carefully managed permissions so everyone only gets to what they're supposed to, and constant monitoring for anything unusual. And remember, it's a shared responsibility. Both the cloud provider and you have roles to play in keeping things safe. Okay, let's talk about securing your AI pipeline specifically with role-based access control, or RBAC. Think of it like a company's internal security system, but for your machine learning projects. RBAC is all about defining who does what within the pipeline. We need to figure out which roles are involved. Maybe there's a data scientist building the model, an ML engineer deploying it, and a security analyst monitoring everything. Then, we assign specific permissions based on those roles. For example, a data scientist might be able to look at the raw training data but shouldn't have access to change the deployed model itself. Finally, we need to make sure these rules actually stick, using things like Cloud IAM or database permissions to enforce them consistently across every part of the pipeline. Let's talk about getting user permission when AI applications are using their data. It's really important to be upfront, tell people exactly what you're doing with their information, what they get in return, and any potential downsides. Instead of just a simple yes or no, try giving users more control by letting them choose specific uses for the data, like location tracking for recommendations versus just collecting general statistics. And crucially, make it easy for people to change their minds. They need to be able to withdraw their consent whenever they want. Finally, keep a record of everything, every request, decision, and how someone changes their preferences. This helps show you're taking things seriously and following the rules. Okay, let's talk about keeping your AI safe when you deploy it to those smaller, edge devices like cameras or sensors. It's a different ballgame than running everything in the cloud. First, we need to make sure the device itself is secure, starting with how it boots up and how we update its software. Secure boot and OTA updates are super important for patching any weaknesses that could be exploited. Then, verifying that the device is actually what it claims to be through something called device attestation can prevent bad actors from using compromised hardware. And of course, you've got to protect your data, both when it's stored on the device and when it's being sent back and forth. Encryption is key. Finally, think about who needs access to your AI models and make sure they only have what they absolutely need. That's role-based access control. Okay, so when we're talking about autonomous systems like robots doing surgery or cars driving themselves, it's really important that we don't just slap on existing rules. We need to build ethics in from the start. First, we have to define what values are most important for these systems. Safety is a big one, of course, but also fairness and transparency. Then we do thorough risk assessments, looking for potential biases in the data they're using and how those could lead to problems. Explainable AI is key. It's about understanding why an autonomous system made a particular decision so we can trust it and fix any issues. And crucially, we need human oversight, a way for humans to step in if things go wrong. Finally, continuous monitoring and regular audits are essential to ensure the systems keep behaving ethically over time. Okay, let's talk about intellectual property when it comes to AI. Think about all the amazing things these models can create, from writing articles to generating images. But this raises a big question: who owns that content? The answer isn't always simple. A lot of it boils down to how the AI was trained. We need to make sure we're using data legally, and then be aware that the output itself might accidentally resemble existing copyrighted material. Transparency is really important too. If you're using AI-generated content, let people know. And keep in mind, copyright law is still catching up with this technology right now. AI creations typically don't qualify for copyright protection unless a human has significantly contributed to the creative process. Let's talk about some really important challenges when it comes to using federated learning, particularly from a compliance perspective. Federated learning is super cool because it lets us train models on data that doesn't have to be centralized, which boosts privacy. But this distributed approach throws up some tricky questions around things like GDPR and the CCPA. Because we're moving insights derived from raw data, not the data itself, there are still potential triggers for these regulations. Then you've got bias. Making sure our models aren't unfairly discriminating against certain groups is tough when everyone has their own unique data sets. And tracking where everything came from and how it was built, that's a big one for auditability. Finally, if you're using a third-party platform to run your federated learning, managing the risk associated with that vendor becomes really important too. It's all about building a solid plan, a combination of technology, good policies, and constant checks to make sure everything is on track. Okay, let's talk about how we manage our AI data specifically, when it stays around and when it goes. It's really important that we follow the rules, like GDPR or CCPA, so we need to know exactly how long we have to keep certain information. But we also can't just hoard everything forever. We need to think about what we actually need. For example, training our AI models might require historical data, but we shouldn't keep it longer than necessary. We should be defining a clear retention schedule, outlining how long different types of data will be kept, and then creating a secure process to delete the data when it's no longer needed. Think about limiting access to only giving people the data they absolutely need to do their jobs. And finally, always keep logs showing what happens with the data. It's vital for accountability and ensuring everything is done correctly. Okay, let's talk about protecting your AI systems from those who might intentionally or unintentionally cause harm. We're talking about insider threats. These can be surprisingly complex because AI is built on data and relies on access. First, it's really important to do a thorough risk assessment. Figure out what your most critical AI assets are. That could be the datasets you're using or the models themselves, and then identify who within your organization has access to them. Next up, tight controls on access are key. Think least privilege, only give people exactly what they need to do their jobs, and always use multi-factor authentication. Then we can start looking at monitoring. Instead of just reacting to individual incidents, AI can help us spot unusual patterns, like someone suddenly accessing data they don't normally touch or making changes to a model without authorization. Data loss prevention tools are also vital, so sensitive information doesn't slip out the door. And finally, and this is crucial, make sure your employees understand the risks involved and know how to report anything suspicious. Regular security awareness training goes a long way. Okay, let's talk about making sure your company is handling AI responsibly. This slide outlines a basic checklist. It's not exhaustive, but it hits the key areas you need to think about. First up, data. We have to understand where our data comes from, how reliable it is, and that we're protecting people's privacy correctly, keeping in mind regulations like GDPR or CCPA. Next, we need to be aware of model risk, meaning, are the AI models fair? Do they produce biased results? Can we even explain why they make the decisions they do? Security is a huge one too, protecting our systems from attacks and ensuring only authorized people have access. And lastly, let's not forget ethics. Documenting clear policies around fairness, accountability, and transparency is crucial. Finally, continuous monitoring and auditing are vital to ensure ongoing compliance. Okay, let's talk about how we can govern AI effectively within smart cities and public systems. It's a really important area because these places are becoming increasingly reliant on AI. Think traffic management, responding to emergencies, and even making decisions about resource allocation. But all that data raises some significant questions. We need strong data governance, which means clear rules around how information is collected, stored, used, and ultimately deleted. It's also vital to understand how these algorithms are making decisions. We're talking about explainable AI, or SAI. And finally, when things go wrong, we need a solid accountability framework. Who's responsible? Crucially, we can't just roll out these systems without getting input from the people who will be affected. Citizen engagement is key to making sure AI serves everyone fairly and ethically. Okay, so let's talk about how to really make sure your AI models are running responsibly. The first step is all about clarity, figuring out exactly what you want the model to do and defining its scope. Next, we need to dig into risk assessment, identifying potential problems like bias or privacy concerns. Finally, it's time to build a governance framework, policies and processes for overseeing everything from data management to model validation, and even how you handle any issues that come up. And just as important, this isn't a one and done thing. Ongoing monitoring and regular reviews are crucial to keeping things on track. Okay, let's talk about how we ensure AI isn't unfairly discriminating when it comes to hiring. As AI takes on more of a role in recruitment, it's absolutely vital that we address the potential for bias. These systems are only as good as the data they're trained on, and if that data reflects existing inequalities, the AI will likely perpetuate them. We need to focus on fairness, making sure everyone has an equal opportunity and transparency, so we understand why these decisions are being made. Plus, protecting candidate data is a huge priority with regulations like GDPR and CCPA. Accountability means knowing who's responsible if something goes wrong. It's not just about using the technology, it's about using it responsibly. Okay, let's talk about building AI systems that can actually pass a regulatory audit. It's not just about having a fancy algorithm, it's about proving you know where your data came from and how your model works. We need to track every step of the process. Think of it like creating a detailed chain of custody for your AI. Then, we have to actively look for bias in our data and models, and if we find it, we need to clearly explain what we did to fix it. Finally, let's make sure our models are understandable. XAI helps with this. And don't forget security. Strong controls are essential. Basically, clear documentation and transparency will be your best friends during an audit. Okay, so when it comes to keeping our AI safe, we need to actively look for problems. We do this using different kinds of testing tools. First up are static analysis tools. They're like code reviewers that check the model source code for potential weaknesses before anything runs. Then there's dynamic analysis, also known as fuzzing. Think of it like throwing random things at the AI to see if it breaks or behaves unexpectedly. We also have vulnerability scanners specifically designed to assess the AI model itself and its environment. Finally, adversarial testing frameworks help us create inputs that might trick the AI, allowing us to test how robust it truly is. It's not enough to just have one tool, a combination of these methods provides much better protection. Okay, so let's talk about how we actually manage the policies around our AI deployments in the cloud. It's not just about building cool models, it's about making sure we're doing things right legally and ethically. The first step is to clearly define what those right things are, outlining policies for data privacy like GDPR or CCPA, tackling potential biases in our models, ensuring they're fair, and demanding explainability so we understand why a model makes the decisions it does. Then, we need to make sure these policies actually stick when we're deploying everything in the cloud. Think automation that enforces those rules within platforms like AWS or Azure. It's important to keep these policies fresh. Regulations change and our models evolve, so we need a process for regular reviews and updates. Finally, let's not forget access control. Only give people the permissions they absolutely need to do their jobs, and constantly monitor everything for any signs of problems. Think security incidents or policy breaches. Okay, let's talk about keeping your AI models on track. Model drift is a really important concept. It happens when the data your model was trained on starts to change over time. Think of it like this. You train a model based on one set of customer behaviors, but then those behaviors shift because of something new happening in the world. Because of these shifts, your model's predictions start to get less accurate, and that's where problems arise for compliance. We need to actively monitor our models for drift, looking at things like performance metrics over time, comparing the data they're seeing now to what they were trained on, and using specific techniques to identify when those relationships are changing. It's about being proactive so you can adapt your models before they cause issues. Okay, let's talk about consent. As AI assistants become more integrated into our lives, it's absolutely crucial that we understand how they're using our data. It's not enough to just assume people agree. We need to get explicit consent for things like voice recordings or location tracking. There are some tricky areas, though. A lot of interactions happen implicitly, and users often don't fully grasp how their information is being used. So the best approach is to give them really granular control over what data they share, explain everything in plain language, and keep communicating those changes. Let's talk about keeping your AI model safe from being taken apart and understood by others. Reverse engineering can expose valuable information, so we need to be proactive. One approach is obfuscation, essentially making the model a little harder for someone to decipher by adding some noise or randomness. Watermarking is another powerful tool. It's like putting a unique signature on your model, allowing you to track where it came from if it gets copied. And of course, strong access controls and monitoring are essential. Finally, hardware-based security measures, like trusted execution environments, can add an extra layer of protection by isolating the AI execution from the rest of the system. It's really about combining several strategies for a solid defense. Okay, let's talk about keeping those AI service keys safe. Think of API access tokens like digital keys that unlock everything. It's really important to only give each key exactly what it needs, minimizing potential damage if it gets stolen. We also need to rotate these keys regularly, like changing your passwords, and store them securely in a dedicated vault rather than just embedding them in your code. And finally, always monitor how these tokens are being used, so you can quickly spot anything suspicious and revoke access immediately if needed. It's all about layered security. Okay, let's talk about making sure our AI systems are safe and compliant as they get rolled out. Think of your CI/CD pipeline. It's how we automatically build, test, and deploy models. We need to bake in governance controls at every stage. That means things like checking if the data used to train a model is properly tracked, looking for any bias that might be creeping in, and making sure only the right people have access to sensitive parts of the process. It's not just about catching problems after deployment, it's about preventing them from happening in the first place. Tools like MLflow can really help with this by providing built-in governance features directly within your pipelines, a great way to keep things consistent and maintain that all-important audit trail. Let's talk about how different countries are tackling AI safety and privacy. The European Union has the AI Act, which takes a really targeted approach based on risk levels, making sure there's human oversight and that we understand how these systems work. California also has strong rules around data privacy, especially with laws like CCPA and CPRA, which impact any AI model using people's information. The UK follows similar principles through GDPR, while China is taking a more proactive role in managing algorithms and protecting national security. And Canada is rolling out EDA, focusing on risk assessment. It's important to remember that this field is changing fast, so keeping up with the latest developments is absolutely key. Let's talk about the NIST AI Risk Management Framework. It's essentially a roadmap for building trustworthy AI. Think of it like a structured process, with 5 key phases from development right through to ongoing monitoring. The framework categorizes risks into areas like technical performance, societal impact, privacy concerns, and more. It also focuses on 5 trustworthiness pillars: responsible use, interoperability, transparency, accountability, and reliability. Implementing the RMF involves first understanding your potential risks, then developing strategies to address them. And just like any good plan, it's important to keep checking in and making adjustments along the way. Okay, let's talk about how to actually build these AI governance committees within your organization. The first step is really about bringing the right people together. You need a team that's not just tech-focused, but includes legal experts to make sure everything's compliant, ethicists to consider fairness and potential biases, security professionals to protect against risks, IT folks to manage the systems, and of course, representatives from the business units actually using AI. Next up, you need to clearly define what you're trying to achieve, which AI systems are part of this committee's remit, and what specific risks are you aiming to address. Then, establish clear roles and responsibilities so everyone knows who's accountable for what. Don't forget to create some documented policies and procedures. These guidelines will be your roadmap. Finally, implement a regular review process. Think about both automated checks and human oversight. It's crucial to ensure that your AI systems are continually aligned with those policies. Okay, so let's talk about building secure AI data lakes. These are incredibly valuable for training our models, but they also store huge amounts of potentially sensitive information. The first step is really understanding where your data is coming from and who needs to access it. Strong metadata management and granular access controls are key here. We need to encrypt everything, both when the data is sitting in storage and when it's moving around. Think about anomaly detection too. Constantly watching for anything that seems out of place can help catch problems early. Finally, don't forget about data quality. Garbage in, garbage out applies just as much to AI as it does to any other system. Okay, let's talk about making sure our AI doesn't unfairly discriminate. Bias can creep into models from the data they learn from, leading to unequal results for different groups. To combat this, we need to build fairness constraints right in. There are a few key approaches, things like boosting the representation of underrepresented groups with augmented data, modifying how the model learns to actively reduce bias during training, and even tweaking the final outputs after predictions have been made. It's really important to remember that fairness itself can mean different things depending on what we're doing, so we need to clearly define what fairness looks like for our specific project before starting. Okay, let's talk about protecting those valuable AI workflows in the cloud. Think of it like this. We're dealing with a lot of data, huge data sets used to train our models, and then all the results and user interactions that come from them. Protecting that data isn't just good practice, it's often legally required. The core strategy here is twofold. First, we encrypt everything when it's sitting at rest in the cloud, like stored training sets. And second, we make sure any data moving between different parts of our system is also encrypted during transit. We can use tools and libraries to do this, and a key management service, think of it as a secure vault for all your encryption keys, helps us keep those keys safe, rotate them regularly, and track who's accessing them. Okay, so let's talk about staying ahead of the curve when it comes to AI security. It's not enough to just react after something bad happens. We need a plan for spotting problems before they become serious issues. That means regularly thinking about how someone could try to trick our models, looking for unusual behavior in those models themselves, and making sure all the data going into them is clean and safe. Don't forget to check what the models are actually producing too. And finally, it's smart to have an outside team poke around and see if they can find ways to break things. That's called red teaming. Okay, let's talk about decommissioning AI models. It's a surprisingly important part of responsible AI development. Think about it, as we build new models, older ones become obsolete. But simply deleting them isn't enough. We need to handle the data they use carefully and systematically. That means having clear policies around how long data needs to be kept for legal or business reasons. It's also really important to document everything about the model, how it was trained, what data it used, so that if there's ever a need to revisit it, maybe for auditing or limited reuse, we have all the information we need. And of course, we need to securely remove any sensitive data from storage, going beyond just deleting files and using methods like tokenization to protect privacy. Okay, let's talk about keeping tabs on your AI system, specifically through audit logging and reporting. Think of this as creating a detailed logbook for every decision your AI makes. It's not just about ticking boxes for regulations like GDPR, it's about building trust and knowing exactly where things stand. We want to track the journey of our data, from its original source all the way through to the model's output. We need to monitor what models are doing, who is accessing them, and any changes made along the way. The reports we generate should show us how accurate the AI is being, if there's any bias creeping in, and give us insights into why a particular decision was made, really helping us understand the why behind the AI choices. Essentially, it's about building transparency and accountability right from the start. Okay, let's talk about some serious hurdles we're facing as AI starts taking over financial markets. It's exciting and powerful, but it also comes with new risks. One of the biggest things is that these AI models aren't static. They can drift over time as market conditions change, and figuring out why an AI made a particular trade can be really difficult. Then there's bias. If the data used to train the AI has biases in it, those biases get amplified, which could lead to unfair or discriminatory trading practices. And because these algorithms are complex, there's a potential risk of them coordinating their actions unintentionally, almost like a silent agreement to do something similar. That's called algorithmic collusion. Finally, Regulators are still playing catch up. The rules around AI in finance aren't really clear yet, so it's a bit of a grey area when it comes to compliance. Okay, let's talk about some really important legal hurdles we face with AI-generated content. As AI tools like chatbots become more powerful, they're creating text, images, all sorts of things. But this amazing capability comes with risks. One big one is copyright. Because these models are trained on tons of existing material, there's a chance they could accidentally copy someone else's work. Then you have the risk of spreading misinformation or even defaming people if the AI generates untrue statements. And, naturally, data privacy concerns come into play, especially with regulations like GDPR and CCPA. Finally, it's tricky figuring out who is responsible when an AI makes a mistake that causes harm. It's a fast-moving area, so staying informed about new rules and guidelines is absolutely essential. Okay, let's talk about navigating those tricky regulations when you're deploying AI, especially in places like Europe or California. It's really important to understand which rules apply to your system, from data privacy to fairness and transparency. Building a solid data governance framework is key. Think about how your data is handled at every stage. We also need to actively look for bias in our AI models and take steps to correct it, using techniques like explainable AI. And don't forget, good documentation is essential. Regulators will want to see exactly how you built your system and why. Okay, so let's talk about building a solid foundation for AI, specifically creating effective policies. The first step is really understanding where you stand now, what risks you might face, and what rules already apply to you, like GDPR or CCPA. Then we need to figure out what our policies should cover, things like protecting people's data, making sure AI isn't biased, and being open about how it works. Getting everyone involved, legal teams, IT, security experts, and even the people who will actually use the AI is super important. And finally, we need to document everything clearly, communicate it effectively, and keep checking in to make sure our policies are still relevant as AI technology changes. Okay, let's talk about securing those powerful recommendation engines we're seeing everywhere. These systems can be really vulnerable if you don't take a proactive approach. One major concern is data poisoning, basically someone trying to trick the system by feeding it bad information. Then there's model stealing. Imagine someone figuring out exactly how your engine works just by watching what users click on. And finally, adversarial attacks, cleverly designed questions that can bypass safety measures. To combat these, we need strong data checks, techniques like differential privacy to protect user info, and methods for making the models themselves harder to copy. Okay, let's talk about handling problems when AI systems go wrong. Because AI can be a bit of a mystery, sometimes a black box, we need to approach incidents differently than we would with traditional software. The first step is always detection, spotting unusual activity or performance dips in the AI. Once something's flagged, containment kicks in. Basically, we quickly isolate the problem area. Then comes investigation. This is where we try to figure out why it happened, often using techniques like explainable AI to understand what's going on inside the model. Finally, we need to fix things, retrain the model or adjust how it's set up, and then carefully monitor everything to make sure it doesn't happen again. Data tracking and good logging are absolutely essential throughout this whole process. Okay, let's talk about building a system that encourages people to speak up if they see something concerning with AI, like potential bias or safety issues. First, you need to create clear and easy ways for employees to report their worries, offering options for anonymous reports if needed. Then, it's important to define exactly what kind of concerns are protected under the policy, referencing laws like GDPR or CCPA. Next up is a dedicated investigation team. Think lawyers, tech experts, and ethics folks working together to handle these reports fairly and impartially. Crucially, you need to promise employees that they won't face any negative consequences for reporting issues. And finally, don't just set it and forget it. Policies should be regularly reviewed and updated as AI technology changes and new regulations come out. Okay, let's talk about keeping our AI data trustworthy. Think of it like building a house. You need a solid foundation. Data integrity means making sure the information we feed into our AI systems is accurate, complete, and hasn't been tampered with along the way. We need to know where that data came from, how it's changed at each step in its journey through the pipeline, and constantly check for any problems. Tools like data lineage can really help us map out this flow and spot potential issues early on. Strong access controls are also key. Only authorized people should be able to touch or modify training data. It's a fundamental aspect of building reliable and responsible AI. Okay, let's talk about getting your data science teams up to speed on AI ethics. It's super important that they understand how their work can unintentionally create bias or have unfair consequences. We need to give them the tools to spot these issues, like recognizing biases in the data itself, and teach them methods for fixing them. Beyond just spotting problems, we also want them thinking about fairness and accountability throughout the entire AI lifecycle, from collecting the data all the way through deploying the finished product. And of course, privacy needs to be a top priority too. Okay, let's talk about keeping track of your AI models. It's a really important part of responsible AI development. Think of it like a detailed logbook for every version of your model. We need to know exactly where the data came from, how it was prepared, and what changes we made along the way. This is called provenance tracking. It's not just about good practice. Many regulations require us to demonstrate this traceability. To do this effectively, you'll want to establish a system for version control. Treat each change like a new version of your model and its associated components. And don't forget metadata. Tracking details like when it was created, who made the changes, and how well it performs will help you maintain accountability. Okay, let's talk about how we make sure AI voice recognition systems are compliant with all the rules. These systems collect asterisk of sensitive data, our voices. So, getting consent up front is absolutely crucial, making sure people know exactly what's happening and agreeing to it. We also need to be really vigilant about bias. These models can unintentionally discriminate if they're not trained on diverse datasets. Transparency is key too. Users deserve to understand how the system works. Finally, protecting that voice data through strong security measures is non-negotiable. Okay, let's talk about protecting patient privacy when we're using artificial intelligence in healthcare. It's a really crucial topic because health data is incredibly sensitive. So the first key thing to think about is data minimization, only collecting the exact information you need for a specific AI application and nothing more. Next up, anonymization or de-identification techniques like differential privacy can help remove things that could identify individuals while still letting us use the data effectively. We also have to make sure our data is stored securely with really strong access controls in place. Basically, only authorized people should be able to see it. And finally, something called explainable AI, or XAI, is important because if we understand how an AI model is making decisions, we can spot potential privacy issues and biases that might otherwise go unnoticed. It's not just about compliance, it's about doing what's right for patients. Okay, let's talk about how we can bring some structure to our AI projects with governance. As we move into MLOps, that's basically automating the machine learning process, things get a bit more complex. We need to think seriously about where our data is coming from, how it's being used, and what impact the models are having. This means solidifying data quality checks, tracking the history of our datasets, and controlling who gets access. Then we need to treat our models like code using version control so we can roll back changes if things go wrong. Finally, we have to monitor those models constantly for any unexpected shifts in performance or bias, and have a plan ready to revert if needed. Basically, governance isn't just a nice to have, it's essential for building trustworthy AI systems. Okay, so let's talk about keeping track of your data in the sprawling AI data lakes. It's really important to know where your information starts its journey, how it changes along the way, like cleaning or adding new features, and who is actually using it. We need to be able to trace back every step so we can make sure everything's compliant, secure, and that our AI models are built on solid, trustworthy data. Let's talk about building trust with AI. As these tools become more common, It's really important that we understand how they make decisions, not just what the outcome is. We're looking at things like explainable AI, or XAI, which helps us see which factors are driving a recommendation. Then there are model cards, which are essentially reports detailing how the AI was built and what it can do. Maintaining auditing trails keeps track of everything that happens with the tool, and incorporating humans into the process. Having humans in the loop allows for crucial oversight and validation. Transparency isn't just a legal requirement, it's about making sure these powerful tools are used ethically and responsibly. Okay, let's talk about making sure your AI models stay safe as they get rolled out. Think of the deployment pipeline like a delivery system. It's how we get those trained models into production. The key is that every step in that process needs to be secured. We need strong access controls so only authorized people can modify or deploy, and no secrets like passwords are ever written directly into our code. Plus, we have to constantly check for vulnerabilities in the tools we're using, like libraries and frameworks. And don't forget about automating tests at every stage, from verifying the data itself is good quality, all the way through ensuring the model performs as expected. Okay, let's talk about keeping AI in your marketing campaigns compliant. As AI becomes more powerful, it's really important to think about how we're using data and making sure we are following the rules, things like GDPR and CCPA. AI models need lots of data, so protecting that personal information is a top priority. Also, make sure your algorithms aren't unfairly targeting certain groups of people. It's crucial to be aware of potential bias. And because some AI systems can be hard to understand, they're often black boxes, we need ways to explain why an AI made a particular decision. Finally, always get clear consent from individuals before using their data for marketing purposes. Let's build a good data governance framework and incorporate tools that help us manage consent effectively. Okay, let's talk about building those crucial AI governance playbooks. It's not enough to just want responsible AI, you need a plan. The first step is really defining what you're trying to achieve, what are the specific goals for your AI initiatives, and which systems these guidelines will cover. Then, we need to figure out the potential risks across the entire AI lifecycle, from how data is collected all the way through deployment and ongoing monitoring. We can use a risk matrix to help with that. Once you've identified those risks, you build out individual playbooks, each one tackling a specific area like privacy or bias, and make sure everyone involved knows what they need to do. Don't forget to document everything thoroughly and keep it updated regularly, because AI is always changing. Let's talk about using open source AI models. They are powerful, but come with some important governance risks we need to be aware of. First, license compliance. Always check the terms carefully because these models might not be suitable for all uses. Then there is bias. Remember that open source models are trained on existing data, which can contain inherent biases. Security is another key area. These models can be vulnerable to attacks, and we need to understand how they work under the hood. Finally, a lack of transparency can be problematic. It's important to document what you know about the model, its training data, and any limitations it might have. By taking these risks seriously and putting in place some mitigation strategies like auditing and bias detection tools, we can use open source AI responsibly. Let's talk about keeping your AI system secure, specifically how to manage all those interconnected pieces that make them work. Think of it like a giant Lego set. Each brick component is important, but if one is broken or weak, the whole structure could crumble. We've got data sources, the models themselves, the infrastructure they run on, and lots of third-party services we rely on. Each of these introduces potential risks. We need to be proactive about identifying those vulnerabilities. It's crucial to focus on things like where your data is coming from, how you're training your models, and what security measures are in place for everything from the service running your AI to any external services it uses. Using tools like dependency scanners can really help you keep an eye out for known weaknesses. And remember, good SBOM software bill of materials will give you a complete picture of all the components involved. Let's talk about how to keep your AI deployments compliant across the major cloud platforms. When it comes to AWS, Amazon Sentinel is a really powerful tool that offers integrated security and compliance management. Think automated threat detection and responses. And CloudTrail keeps track of everything happening with your API calls, giving you a clear audit trail for AI model usage. Moving over to Azure, Azure Policy lets you set organization-wide standards, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud provides continuous monitoring, specifically looking for responsible AI practices. Finally, on Google Cloud, Security Command Center gives you centralized visibility into risks, while the Data Catalog helps manage your data lineage. All three platforms, Oz, Azure, and GCP, support key compliance frameworks like NIST and SOC 2, so it's a good starting point for building a solid foundation. Okay, so let's dive into how we can actually put ethics into practice with our AI. A really helpful thing to do is create a scoring framework. Think of it like a checklist for your AI projects. First, you need to decide what's really important to your organization and its values. Things like fairness, transparency, and privacy are usually good starting points. Then, you can choose an existing framework that helps guide you, or even build your own based on those core principles. It's then about translating those high-level concepts into concrete measurements. How do you actually assess whether something is fair or transparent? You'll need to set up a repeatable process for applying the scoring system to new projects and existing ones, and importantly, it shouldn't be a one-time thing. You'll want to review and update the framework regularly as things change and we learn more about what works best. Okay, let's talk about building AI services that actually get approved by regulators. It's not just about creating cool tech, it's about doing it responsibly and legally. The first step is all around data. You need to know exactly where your data comes from, how clean it is, and make sure it's fair. Then, as AI models become more complex, we need to understand why they are making the decisions they do. That's where explainability comes in. Finally, you absolutely have to think through potential risks, what could go wrong, and build safeguards into your system from the beginning, always aligning with relevant regulations. Okay, so let's talk about tracking how your AI models are actually being used. It's surprisingly important. Essentially, we need to know what is happening with our AI and how much it's costing. Tracking API usage helps us ensure we're following the rules, managing budgets effectively, and even spotting potential security issues. By logging every single call to an AI API, including when it happened, who made it, which model was used, and what data went in and out, we can then build dashboards that give us a clear picture of overall usage. Adding extra information, like project names or the team responsible, makes this even easier to analyze. Setting up alerts for unusual activity is also a great way to stay ahead of potential problems. Okay, let's talk about Shadow AI. It's a really important topic for any large organization using artificial intelligence. Basically, Shadow AI refers to AI models that pop up without being officially tracked or managed. Think of departments experimenting with tools or people using pre-trained models in ways they weren't originally intended. This can create some serious risks, like sensitive data potentially bypassing security protocols, and it becomes incredibly difficult to understand what's actually happening with the data and the models. It also creates a bigger attack surface for bad actors. The good news is there are steps we can take. A central model registry helps us keep track of everything. Data lineage tracking shows us where the data is coming from and going, and strong policies with access controls ensure only authorized people are working with sensitive information. And finally, regular audits and monitoring, just like a health check for your AI systems, let you catch potential problems early on. Okay, let's talk about managing how we keep our AI models sharp and relevant. It's not enough to just build them and forget about them. We need a process for regularly updating and retraining. This involves a constant check on the data we're using, making sure it's accurate, unbiased, and still useful. Then we need to be closely watching how well our models are performing, looking for any drops in accuracy or changes in behavior. When things start to slip, that's when we trigger a retraining cycle. And crucially, we have to keep track of every version of the model, so if something goes wrong, we can quickly and safely roll back to our previous working state. It's like regular maintenance for our AI systems, keeping them healthy and reliable. Okay, let's talk about compliance specifically when it comes to autonomous vehicles and drones. It's a big deal not just because the tech is new, but because people's safety and privacy are at stake. We're dealing with huge amounts of data being collected, so protecting that data while still using it for operations is a major challenge. Think about things like GDPR and CCPA, which mean we need to be super careful about how we handle personal information. Then there's the whole safety aspect. These vehicles need incredibly rigorous testing and backup systems built in. And let's not forget liability. Figuring out who's responsible if something goes wrong is a complex legal question right now. Finally, regulations around where they can fly and what they can carry are constantly evolving, especially when it comes to drones. Okay, let's talk about how we need to govern these increasingly powerful voice assistants and NLP tools. They handle incredibly personal data, our voices. That means we have a huge responsibility around privacy, making sure they're fair and unbiased, and actually knowing why they make the decisions they do. It's not just about building cool tech, it's about building trustworthy systems with clear ownership and accountability. Okay, let's talk about measuring our success when it comes to securing AI. It's not just about finding problems, we need to know if we're doing a good job fixing them and preventing new ones. KPIs, or key performance indicators, are really important here. They're basically quantifiable ways of saying, are we succeeding at what we're trying to do with our AI security program? We can track things like how well we're detecting attacks, how quickly we respond when something is found, and how many vulnerabilities we patch on time. Things like a 95% detection rate in the last month, or reducing the time it takes us to find and fix problems, that's what we measure. Remember to keep your KPI aligned with your organization's overall risk and any legal requirements you have to follow. And don't be afraid to adjust them as things change. Okay, let's talk about privacy impact assessments, or PIAs, for AI projects. Think of them as your system's privacy health check. Because AI systems are handling increasingly sensitive data, we need to be super careful and proactive. A PIA helps us understand what information is being used, how it's being used, and what potential risks there might be. We start by defining the project scope, mapping out all the personal data involved, and then assessing those risks, things like data breaches or unfair outcomes. We come up with strategies to minimize those risks, and finally, we continuously monitor everything to make sure it's still working properly as the AI evolves. It's really an ongoing process of checking in. Okay, let's talk about how we can responsibly use AI in academic research. Specifically, when we're working with open data, it gets a little more complicated. We really need to prioritize transparency. That means being clear about where our data comes from and exactly how the AI models were built. Bias detection is also super important. We have to actively look for any biases hidden within the datasets themselves or in the algorithms we're using to make sure everyone benefits equally from the research. And of course, protecting data privacy and security is paramount. We need to follow all relevant regulations like GDPR or HIPAA if it applies. Finally, reproducibility matters a lot, making sure others can repeat our experiments by sharing code, data access agreements, and detailed documentation. Open data AI introduces even more challenges, so we have to think about the potential for misuse and build strong governance structures. Thank you for watching.